Welcome to Theory Paranormal. My name is Pax with my fellow host Dalton. This is going to be season 2, episode/podcast number 8. And the subject is going to be on astral projection and out-of-body experiences. So, give everybody a moment to take that in. Okay, we're good. So, with that, welcome everybody. Theory Paranormal. This is a paranormal podcast in reference of the paranormal nature, things that you can't normally explain over coffee with mom and dad when they ask you how your weekend went or your week. We try to take subjects, either that me and my partner Dalton, that we do the paranormal stuff together, team. We put the subjects out there. We try to explain some things. We give our theory, hence the name, Theory Paranormal. And we inject a little bit of levity in the topics just for some humor. But ultimately, we try to put what our thoughts are in it and let everybody have some points to think about. So, with that being said, how are you doing today, Dalton?
Doing pretty good, my friend. Doing pretty good. You know, just strolling along with day by day life, as we always do.
Oh yeah.
But astral projection, huh? We went from We went from reincarnation to deja vu. Now we're going to astral projection.
Correct.
How about that?
Oh yeah. How about that? So,
tell me. Well, before we get started, I want to recognize we did have an email from the last podcast, right?
Yes, we did.
So this person was basically asking about our opinion on the topic, which we kind of, I'm going to say we kind of, if you listen to the podcast, we kind of gave our spiel about it. They were talking about how they have memories of a person that's close to them or something, and they had like events with this person, and they were able to remember them, all the events and stuff. If I recall, that's what he was talking about. And this basically, I guess, happened to them and somebody else. Pretty interesting statement that he gave. He was more only talking about memories are not limited to the person in their current existence. He relies more on comment, like, today, I guess. Like he calls it a memory library, which I can kind of see that. But he went on and he talked about his experiences, and one thing he was doing, I think he was doing something with his grandma, and then an eggshell or something broke, and then something happened similar to that, and he said, she kind of looked up like deja vu. But anyway, his main thing was, or they left the letter C in a period. So C, thank you for the email. And got a PS there. It says, how long does deja vu last? Seconds, minutes, or just moments?
Right.
I'm gonna say just moments. Like sometimes it's brief, and like I mentioned in the podcast, you really sometimes might not know it until you walk away. What do you think, man? What do you think? How long do you think deja vu lasts?
I think deja vu lasts seconds to maybe about 10 seconds or so from my own personal experience that I've had thus far. I think it's about eye of the beholder, and it all depends on the scenario of what's going on and how cognizant you are of it. So I think everybody has a different interpretation, a different awareness of it. And ultimately, it just depends on how much you are keyed into it of the scenario. And just to let you know, it was actually a female that wrote that in.
Oh, okay.
And to recap, what it came down to is that the individual had an experience in the kitchen that had to do with cooking and so forth, and an egg dropped, and they were so old for age. Well, the same exact scenario literally happened in the same spot with a family member that was older than them at their same age that the younger individual was. Same, making the same recipe, same everything. And so the email.
Oh, that's right. One was the grandmother, one was the mother.
Yeah. And so
that's right.
And so ultimately what it came down to is that potentially through bloodlines and age and so forth, that maybe you are predetermined / destined to have certain events happen or repeated comparative to something that may have happened previously before. So, but then the person went on to just more or less say that events in life may or may not be planned, and there potentially could be a memory / recollection type system in place that could furnish thoughts and memories of things that have happened, maybe not this lifetime, but you're able to retrieve that and get hindsight or a glimpse into things that have maybe happened in the past that may be associated to you on a personal level. And by past, I'm talking like not in your lifetime. There's no way you have this knowledge that you learned it, but yet you're able to retrieve it and know things. And there's no other way that you could have known. So it was.
Yeah, kind of like she mentioned reincarnated, which we mentioned in the podcast about being reincarnated. And I also said that, you're reincarnated, your energy and your soul just goes into another vessel. So of course, whatever you picked up in your past life with your energy and your soul, yes, you're supposed to, like I mentioned before, you're supposed to forget. You're not supposed to remember your past life, but there might be a break or a tear in the barriers now that, that's why you have these people, these kids remembering stuff that they just shouldn't know. They couldn't know. I mean, it's not that they shouldn't know it. It's that they couldn't know it. They're too young to know that. And so, yeah. So, yeah, I agree. It's seconds and minutes. I mean, it could be that can be considered as moments, but I agree, man. Seconds, like it's not something that lasts a long time.
Right. So definitely appreciate that listener reaching out to us and touching base and saying, hey, here are my thoughts on this subject. For individuals that may not be aware or that are just now catching our podcast show, we don't normally put it out there, all the different places that we are, but we're on iHeartRadio, FM radio, Audible, Amazon Music, used to be Google Podcasts, but they transitioned over to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and a host of other podcast platforms that Theory Paranormal is on. So we are definitely very appreciative to be on many places that people can hear us. We are a worldwide podcast. So with that being said, we've had people listen to us in Asia, South America, North America, Europe, you name it, all over the place. Canada. We've literally garnered at least 40 out of the 50 states in the United States that listeners have listened to us in. Over in Europe, everywhere from Germany to Norway to Italy to Greece.
And worldwide.
You name it. We have individuals listen to us everywhere, and I could go on and on and on with all the different countries. But I would rather focus and talk about what's going on with this podcast.
Yeah, and at the end, the emails are great, and like I said, and he said, thank you for the email. Keep sending them. I mean, we get a bunch of them. A lot of them are just questions where people don't want us to talk about it over the air. They just want to ask questions. That's fine too. And you can reach us at info@theoryparanormal.com and send us an email. You got any questions on any of the past podcasts or any podcasts that we do from this day forward, or, whatever, just send us one. We always look forward to it.
Oh yeah. And it doesn't make a difference how old the podcast is, or if you just want to touch base and give us some information that has nothing to do with the podcast, or have us review any evidence or footage or material that you maybe have captured yourself or got secondhand and you want a professional opinion on it. by all means, please forward it to us, and we can give you our initial impression and let you know what we think on that. So, and we've done that before in the past. We've been able to help out scores of individuals. We're very happy to pass our knowledge and expertise if and when the opportunity presents itself. So
astral projection.
Astral projection. That is the more metaphysical term of this subject matter versus out of body experience, or potato, outer body experience. It just depends on the way you're phrasing it.
Well, you can also go scientifically and say which is separating the astral body from the physical vessel. Physical vessel, of course, being your body, and your astral body is like your energy form inside. It's basically a profoundly spiritual endeavor that many ancient civilizations have known about, and modern day seekers are catching on to insights. And like they say that one can gain this practice, and I've heard about the books that try to teach you how to astral project. I don't know. I mean, I'm an astral projector myself, and I never, it seems like you're dreaming when you do it at first, when you're not truly understanding what you're actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of seems like you're having a dream, but when you realize, like when I astral project, like I can go around the house and then see my family sleeping in their beds, and to me, after a while of doing that, I was kind of like, I would try different things. And so, like, if I went through a wall, I could feel my body tightening up. Like you can feel it, like the sensation of you squeezing through a wall. Then I started to realize, I'm like, well, wait a minute. If I'm feeling this, if I'm feeling like I'm going through like an object, a solid object, and I'm tensing up, even though my astral form has left my body, I still feel it. And if I can see, my family sleeping in their beds, like go in the room and watch over them in the spiritual form. But then when you come back and you're looking at yourself, like I've seen myself laying there, and then I'm like, so after a while of doing that, I'm kind of like, I need to research this, because this is kind of too real, if you want to say. It's kind of, but I've had some fun things with it. I mean, my ex used to get up and be like, "Hey, who you talking to, or what are you doing?" And one night, and she was not really a believer in the paranormal or anything, and one night she thought I was actually like dead, because I wasn't moving, but I was projected. I was out of my body, and I was floating around doing whatever I was doing at that time, usually chasing other spirits out the house, because it's easier for me to see them in that form. And I kept hearing her go, calling my name, saying, wake up, and I felt this, I can't really explain it, but it was just a weird feeling. So when I came back to my body, I came back so fast that she watched my body sink into the bed, and I flipped out of the bed onto the floor. It's just like, and then I quickly jumped up off the floor, and I'm like, hey, why'd you push me out of the bed? She's like, nope. You better tell me what just happened. You know what I mean? So I had to explain it to her, my paranormal stuff and being an astral projector. So it was kind of funny, but kind of weird for her at first. But it comes in a, it's very handy if you're able, you got the capabilities to do it, and what you can do with that. For instance, my daughter, she has abilities, but a little bit different than mine. She actually sees them, and one of them played a trick on her and made themselves look like my oldest daughter. And she followed her out of the room half asleep, because we were remodeling our guest bathroom and they had to use our master bathroom. And of course, I woke up, opened the door, and there she is standing. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, well, I'm waiting on sis to get out in the bathroom. And I'm like, she ain't in the bathroom. I said, you ever see the door open? And she's like, nope. I said, go in there and do your thing. And so when she went back to bed, I asked her projected and was able to create a kind of a barrier around the perimeter of the house inside. And then after that, she didn't have any problems. She's seen them, but they were the ones that were legit, not ones trying to play tricks. You know what I'm saying? So,
Oh, I do.
So, well, what about you, man?
Well, I'll say this just to set the premise, just to clear the air, because we know what we're talking about. But I know some listeners are probably scratching their head and go, "What in the world are you getting at?" So here's the short and sweet premise of astral projection or out of body experience. I want you to think of you being asleep, and when you go to sleep, you get tired mentally. You go to bed, you're knocked out, you're snoring, you don't remember anything, and you wake up and you feel refreshed. Okay. Now that's the premise of sleeping. Well, imagine where you go to sleep, but instead of you being asleep, you are mentally awake, like you've had 100 cups of coffee, and you're conscious. Well, that is the premise of astral projection. Your body is physically asleep, inert, not moving, in a resting state. Consciously, in your brain, your mind, on an energy level, you are awake. And then for all intensive purposes, as it goes to theory, to personal experiences, to researched experiences at different research centers and colleges and universities and different religions and different places throughout time, all throughout history and the world, you leave your body. And what I mean by that is imagine a carbon copy of your body that just steps out of it like a ghost, like Casper. If anybody watched Casper the Ghost back in the day, well, that's more or less how it is. There's a secondary version of you based on the principle of energy and conscious thought. And so then you're able to go to different places. It can be like, as Dalton was saying, through the house. It could be to a different location across the city, maybe across the state, or even across the world. Hence, astral travel is what it is. And some people would even dare call this remote viewing by being able to get information and bringing it back to your physical body. The levels of the way this is referred to sometimes will also be OBE, as I previously stated, or out-of-body experience. Basically, that could be a temporary type thing. Very limited, very quick. One of the earmarks to this, which is interesting, is I'm sure everybody's had this experience once in their life when they're sleeping. And when you're dead asleep and then your whole body jolts and you kind of shoot up, sit up in the bed, or your whole body jolts and you wake up all of a sudden. Well, physiologically speaking, from a medical sense, that has to do with nerves. It has to do with different dopamine levels in the brain from when you're trying to sleep and your body's bouncing things out and you come to. That's one perspective, medically speaking. The other, for people that are more into metaphysical aspects and astral projection and other things, some people will argue and say, well, that's your astral version coming back into your physical body. So it's like, okay, I'm kind of the glass is half empty, half full type of person. So I'd say that may be a possibility. The other way to look at this is in various religions and cultures, there is a terminology that's called phasing. And that means basically, again, leaving your body and to ascend a higher conscious level of enlightenment and understanding. celestial, eternal, or nirvanic body. It just depends on the overall theology aspect of what you follow is going to dictate the way it's going to be described. But ultimately,
well, they also go ahead.
Ultimately, it just comes down to a higher level of consciousness. Some people medically will say it's due to psychiatric disorders, brain dysfunctions, maybe foreign pharmacological agents in the body, or altered psychological states. I mean, it all depends which way you want to go to justify what it is. But the thing that I find very interesting between the research that I did on this a long time ago, decades ago, and watching firsthand accounts through documentaries and reading and so forth, is the knowledge people were obtaining and getting and things people were automatically having was kind of startling. Because let's say, for instance, somebody lives in Spain and they speak the native language. They've never been anywhere else their whole life. And then out of nowhere, one day, they start understanding Hangul, which is the native language of the people of Korea, and start knowing their culture, start knowing things that only a native person would know if they lived in the vicinity of certain areas of the country. And just to know that out of nowhere, from just going to bed and waking up, you kind of have to say, this is kind of interesting. But
unless they're possessed, then it's a whole nother chapter.
Well, yeah, that's a whole different podcast that we did previously called Possession. Riveting, exciting episode that we did, me and Dalton.
Well, use the reference for Casper. I'll use the reference of Michael J. Fox and the Frighteners for somebody that's ever seen that, where he had to go into to save his girlfriend, the new girlfriend, who was a medic. She was a doctor, and she actually pretty much put him almost in like an induced death, where the heart rate, remember, she put him in the freezer, got his heart rate real low, and then he astral projected pretty much. Well, if you want to call it astral projection, or his spirit form came about. So that's kind of what, to me, that's kind of the astral projection part. And he had to turn into a ghost basically to fight a ghost. And he only had so much time to do it. But anyway, the astral projection is kind of the same thing. So to me, what it boils down to, journey of self-discovery, and it's actually, if you want to call it, it's a passport to unseen realms.
Right.
Now you can go when you do outside physical, when you're outside your physical body, the astral plane is a dimension of reality beyond our physical world, of course. So basically, there's a couple things, like I've actually been in an area. Insidious is the movie Insidious is another that's actually about astral projection, and it was handed down to his son, and he astral projected somewhere that he wasn't supposed to be, and he got trapped by a demon that was waiting his time to take over the kid's body. And spoiler alert, if anybody hadn't seen it. But so basically, I'm not going to go into the whole story of how I've been somewhere. I just say I've been somewhere I wasn't supposed to be, and it wasn't very comfortable. I don't know how I got there. Normally, I was always like just stayed inside the house, or around the yard, or whatever. But I've had people tell me, some other paranormal investigators that also have a religious background behind them, and they told me that basically, without getting too politically religion, but basically saying that astral projectors were created so that we're like the hand of God, basically. So, and I'm not saying, I'm just saying this is what I was told. So basically what happens is, if somebody's in a hospital and they're sick, or they're they have a disease or something, then God will take certain amount of astral projectors and bring them into the room to help heal that person. He uses the astral projectors to actually, like, each astral projector has supposed to have some kind of ability. I'm not going to say gift. I don't like the word gift, so I'm just going to say ability to do something. So he takes whatever's going on, he takes those certain ones, brings them into the room, and helps heal the person that's sick. Which, you've heard of the miracles. One day there's a person laying there, and you know, they're not understanding what's going on with that person. They can't figure it out, and the next morning they wake up, and the person's sitting there eating breakfast, watching cartoons or something, and they're floored because they're like, "What just happened?" Like, yesterday, we couldn't figure out what was wrong with this person. They were barely speaking, barely moving. Now they're eating breakfast, moving around, talking about what's up. You've heard those stories, right? So the whole thing is, that's one take that I put out in the pasture, because I don't know if that's real or not. I can't answer that. I've never personally remember ever doing an astral projection, at a time that I've done it, and remembered being in a hospital room or anything. Now, maybe I'm not supposed to remember that. Who knows? But I don't recall any of that. Now, the other part, the perks. There's perks of astral projection. It's not just like hey, it's a cool party trick, do it again. It's a deep dive in your spiritual, deep in your spiritual self. So, personal enlightenment, gain new perspectives or unearth buried emotions, higher realm connectivity, encounter higher states of consciousness, which you kind of mentioned, or even spiritual entities. And then self-discovery, uncover insights about your life's path or your innermost self, which is kind of like, wouldn't you say, kind of reaching for your chi?
You could say that.
You're going for your
a higher level of enlightenment, which it could be related to chi, which is another name for energy, which people are used to. In the metaphysical world, you're talking about your chakras and your power points and all of that. Collectively, it's the same thing, but reference point wise, and depending on what you're talking about, could mean different things for subject matter.
Right. Well, I'm going with your life's path and when they say your innermost self. Usually, when you're going for your inner self, you're trying to, to me, you're trying to grab your chi and get your inner spirit going. They talk about things. I've never had to do a mental or physical prep. They talk about meditation, relaxation, overcoming fear. I've never had any of that. I just go to sleep. I guess you want to say that's part of the abilities that I've had amongst the other stuff, is just being able to go to sleep. And then whenever I feel like that I had to go, I don't even think I had a feeling of it. I just did it. And it was at a time where I needed to do it, I guess. And other times when I don't do it, it's not because I'm thinking of it, or I planned on it. Like, I'm going to go to bed. Now, that moment with my daughter, where that entity was messing with my daughter, I planned on it. Like, I'm going to go to sleep, and I'm going to get such in a deep sleep that I'm going to astral project and find out what's going on here. Because I don't like tricksters. I don't like spirits playing tricks. So, but every other time, I can't say that I actually even thought about it. It just happened. And like I said in the beginning, I had to learn what it was. So, but they also tell you that during your adventure, they call it your astral adventure. Stay aware, keep a clear head to make the most of your journey, and make sure you have a safe return. Which is I do know that you think of your physical body, and you'll zip right back into it once you think about it. That's how that works. But I don't know, man. The scientific Is there any kind of, we talked about it in the last podcast, I believe, where they were doing experiments on people trying to induce astral projection.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. There's been multitudes of universities and institutions around the world that have looked into this. And if I am correct, even the CIA looked into this for various functionalities of potential use. There have been individuals from the late 1800s all the way up to current time that have tried to not only learn from previous individuals, but also to try new methodologies for out-of-body experiences. I briefly touched base on it in the last podcast episode, but there's a place that is in Virginia called the Monroe Institute, named after Henry Monroe. And he was a big individual studying into astral projection / OBEs. And he was looking at all the different ways that they could be induced, from traumatic brain injury, sensory deprivation, near-death experiences, dissociative and psychological drug, as far as it goes for methodologies, dehydration, sleep disorders, and dreaming and electrical stimulation of the brain. Those are just some of the ways they were able to induce this feeling of doing that. Then you have levels of psychologists and neuroscientists regarding OBEs as dissociative experiments occurring along different psychological and neurological factors, which have to do with the psychology of the brain and neurologically of the way the brain is working and chemical makeups and things like that. I found it to be very interesting because this institute is literally still, to this day, practicing off their multitudes of decades of research, looking into all of this, doing case studies and so forth. Sometimes you may hear the phrasing of lucid dreaming. That's another form of this, as it is. You can find out about parapsychology individuals that are psychologists with a emphasis in the paranormal that look at this as pretty much subtle body can detach itself from the body, or the soul, as they call it. But there's just tons and tons of organizations that do research on this, and universities and so forth. And
yeah, they say that your soul never completely disconnects from your body. They call it the silver cord.
Right.
It's a silver cord. And a lot of this stuff, it can be seen throughout numerous traditions, from Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, to many other forms of traditions. And the one thing that, I mean, everybody, they all, again, this is like doing the deja vu thing. You know, everybody starts out with the same saying, outer body experience. And then it's when you really dive in, then you got people calling it a rare phenomena. If it's been recorded throughout history with different lores, basically on how to do it, and then most recent accounts to this day, I mean, that's where you got to get into, the thick of it, I guess, if you want to call it.
Oh, yeah. Now, one of the things that people initially, when they get into OBEs or astral projection, we started off in the very beginning of this episode talking about just traveling. But it's much, much deeper than just traveling around and sightseeing. From what is quote unquote said that's out there, you can go to different levels, as they call it, or realms.
Yeah.
Of consciousness or enlightenment or understanding. Think of it as a building. Here physically, maybe we're at level 1. You go to sleep, maybe that's level 2. the more you become conscious and aware, the higher the levels are. And the higher of the levels that you go, the higher are the levels of things, people, embodiments of some form of consciousness, energy can be in those levels, bad or good. Just like we have bad or good in our world physically, well, there you go. It's the other side. So that's from the research that I've done, reading dozens of books and watching documentaries and so forth. For, I guess you could say, a better way of putting it, this potentially, hypothetically, could be where the other side is of loved ones and spirits and all that stuff.
Well, again, and you could have a purpose. Astral projectors could have. Now, I'm not talking about the ones that read the book and try to learn how to do it. I'm talking about the natural. Like, I'm a natural. So you could have some kind of purpose. And there is a lot more than just visiting other realms and going to other places or meeting entities. But I know that in my research back in 2014, there was a case study out of the University of Ottawa's School of Psychology. I don't know if you ever heard of Ottawa's School of Psychology.
I've heard of Ottawa.
Right. They got a School of Psychology in which a woman said she could astral project. So what they did was they put her again under a fMRI machine, and she was basically stationary for about an hour, but basically she was in and out of astral projections. She was guided in and out, in which she was prompted to move her non-physical body in different ways. Now, what these researchers did was they monitored the activity in different regions of her brain. And throughout the exercise, they found that she did show activity that correlated with motion during the time she claimed to be astral projected. So basically, they were showing some kind of movement in the brain and the energy of your inside of your body that basically she was probably laying there still sleeping, but her brain was showing as though her body was moving, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
And
it was moving on a level minuscule, like CNS, the central nervous system level, but it wasn't happening outwardly physically. Like the impulses were there mentally, brain wise.
right. And then you got this Eben Alexander, who is a neurosurgeon. He also was on the subject of research on outer body experiences and astral projection. And I believe it was 2007 or 2008, basically an inexplicable brain infection left him in a week-long coma, basically. And when he woke, he claims to have had profound memories of a journey into another realm. Since then, he's dedicated his life to exploring the mysteries of the human consciousness. Now, this is where near-death experience was not voluntary. I don't know anybody that wants to volunteer to do a near-death experience, but that's what they said. So
nope, no, thank you. I'll pass.
I'll pass too. So it did cause Alexander to think astral projection was possible, and he tells basically the MBG that he now uses binaural beats based on audio recordings to travel beyond the five senses and explore non-physical aspects of the consciousness. Now, here's another thing. So we went from the things that you mentioned to hypnotism, because in the movie Insidious, the way they got him, they got the father to, because he forgot about it, astral projection, and when you forget about it, you don't use it or whatever, I guess it goes away. So they had to hypnotize him to get him to relax to where he could astral project and go find his kid in the other realm.
Yeah.
And so, the hypnotizing. So this guy is using audio and like recordings of audio to get into the astral form. Now,
to induce it.
one of the right, to induce it. Because he had a near-death experience, and for about a week, he was in a coma, and he swore that he went to other realms and did whatever. Now, that could just be... Now, see, I would have to say that you're pushing the fine line between your actually ghostly spiritual form of dying came out, or just your astral projection form came out. You know what I'm saying? Because he was in a near-death experience. So I wouldn't know. I would say there's a fine line there. What exactly was going on there? So, because the problem when it comes to declaring astral projection real or fake is that much of the information about it is pinning down the human consciousness within the realm of modern science. And they have proved it to be very difficult and potentially impossible. It's an impossible task. Now, to me, I know it's not an impossible task, and I know a bunch of other natural astral projectors, and that's just their way of, you know, to me, basically saying, in my opinion, again, my opinion, basically denying the fact that you can actually do it. You know, look how long they've denied the paranormal, or not denied it, but just kept it under wraps. You know, oh, that's ghosts, whatever, aliens, whatever. Now, when I see people say stuff like that, that because it's not difficult, and the key word here is when they say this. The key word is potentially impossible. Potentially, they're not saying it's impossible. They're saying it's potentially an impossible task. So that tells you right there, they know what's going on, and it's a real deal. It's nothing that I'm not going to say. There's no hesitation there to say that it's real. I know it's real. So, but go ahead. You got something?
Well, I was just going to say that I've said this many times in the past, from a scientific level and a Western and Eastern medical philosophy level, anything that has to do with the paranormal is always going to naturally try to debunk or prove false of whatever it is that's happening, because that's the narrative of science. It's the have and have nots to being able to say, yes, this is real, or yes, this is not real. I think ultimately, just to go off your question there of, how's this really play out? I think it's about eye of the beholder. Everybody has different experiences. It's kind of like the game of telephone. Everybody has intimate knowledge of whatever it is going on. But by the time it's passed along, it gets misconstrued, it gets changed, it gets altered, or it gets to the point of people are naysayers because they never heard the originality version of it. So then they hear it when it's already been modified or changed, so many times.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, I dig it. It's a thing that if you don't know anybody that's done it, or you've never been around it, it's something that you go, what? Come on, man. I mean, ghost, okay, we're believing in ghosts today, but now you're telling me that y'all can do outer body experiences and travel to other realms. Well, why not? It's part of the paranormal. It's the unexplained, right? So, but when you mention Western and Eastern civilizations, I will say that, and I think her name was Roxana, but she completed her residency at the University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies. Imagine that. They have a perceptual studies class. So basically what she's saying is where Alexander's own near-death experience was actually studied fundamentally. Wow. Okay. The scientific community in this country, I know sometimes I have problems pronouncing. Plus, I'm kind of tired after driving 700 miles a day. But anyway, the scientific community in this country is very westernized, very much based in what does the evidence say? That's my air quotes. What does the evidence say? And that can sometimes pull away our curiosity from things greater than ourselves. That's and I'm right there before I move on to the next thing. I'm going to say that's part of the problem, is that people don't have the open mind and want to go investigate what is that. Like if you told me that something was going on and blah, blah, blah. I can't even think of a scenario right now, but just whatever. And I'm going to go see what it is. I'm not going to automatically just go, that's fluey. I don't believe it. You're blowing smoke. No, because I live outside the box. Everybody lives inside the box. What I call inside the box. They're very closed-minded and they got blinders on. People that live outside the box, they want to know more. They want to learn more. If you give them something to go look at, they're going to go look at it, and then we're going to go, oh yeah, that is fluey. That's a joke, okay? Or wow, that's very real. I didn't know that. And so this lady Roxanne, she adds that there is no real way to basically definitively measure astral projection or compare them to a control group. Not to mention, studying these things requires someone with funding to have interest. And to that end, she was saying that most people don't know how to astral project. So rounding up solid sample size of research, which basically what she's saying is getting people that are natural astral projectors to come forward and let them study. You can't just, and I agree with her on that. You can't just grab somebody and go, hey, I want you to lay here and astral project. But the thing is, again, is here's somebody that's saying that you have to have people that have the interest that want to fund research like that. Now, didn't you say that clinic up there does research like that? So, excuse me. So I don't know, man. It's like you you can have people that can naturally do it, and all of a sudden you have people, psychics, mediums, whatever, people that astral project are writing books and trying to teach people how to do it. Now, my opinion, do I think teaching a person how to astral project is a good thing? No. That's like taking a person and saying, here's a flashlight and a K2, go into the Waverly Hills there in the most haunted sanitarium in the country and go do a paranormal investigation.
Yeah.
No. You just sent them into the worst place of danger that you possibly could. Now, why would you want to teach somebody to do it when you know very well that, yes, they're going to travel, they might travel to other realms, and it might be good for a little while, but this person might also go like somewhere like I've been, which ain't very comfortable and is not a very good place to be. You're not really supposed to be there. Don't know how I got there. I wound up there one night sleeping, and it wasn't pretty, and I had to fight my way back out. So the I don't know, man. It's kind of weird when they say, let's teach you how to do something that can endanger yourself, because if you ever watch Insidious, that kid, so he was actually taken by a demon and trapped. So he was like in a coma, right? And he didn't know, like he was a kid. He was drawing pictures like he was, and the only reason I'm kind of going off this movie is to let people know that, here's a kid didn't know. He was drawing himself with a cape like he's Superman, he's flying through the air. He thought it was fun until he got trapped by a demon. And then they didn't know what was wrong with him. He was basically breathing, doing whatever, but he was in a coma. And so if people, to me, it's just forewarning, like we warn people about the paranormal, doing paranormal investigations. You don't know what place you're walking into. You don't know what's going to follow you home. Astral projection is pretty much the same basis. You don't know where you're going to go, and you don't know if you're going to get stuck. Are you going to make it back? I mean, yeah, you can think about your body and you're supposed to zip right back. What if that doesn't happen? Then what? Like I said, where I went to a place I really wasn't supposed to be, and I had to fight my way out of there to be able to get back to my body. I'm not going to go into full detail of that, but it's kind of what I had to do. It was like almost a spiritual battle, and I found my way back. And I think after that, my astral projections have slowed down because, yeah, I want to say, yeah, it was a little scary. to go somewhere like that and know that I might not make it back to my body to where I can wake up and hug my family.
Yeah.
But she says all these things. And she also says that there tends to be a split between science and spirituality. We all know that. We all know that there's a definite divide between what science thinks and what people that are spiritual and paranormal and all that think. Now I will say that even though science has stepped in a little bit more now than before, I think they've been doing it all along. I mean, heck, if Benjamin Franklin and all them back in the day were dabbling with the paranormal, scientists all this time had to be dabbling with the paranormal and the unknown just to see. I mean, that's what scientists do. They do things to see what the facts are. So, but here she says, I don't think you can prove or disprove astral projection or out of body experiences. So again, she starts out with kind of a hesitant, but again winds up saying, I don't think you can prove or disprove it.
No.
I think you can prove it. It's easy to prove. I think it's easy to disprove if you have somebody that doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Would you agree to that?
No, I fully do. I think it comes down to education, experience, which I already leaned back onto previously, and going from there. It's like anything that's learned, the more you do it, the better you're at it. The less you do it, the less you know, the more not open you are to what can and can't happen, good or bad, to your own personal detriment, unfortunately.
Right. It's just scientists are going to always start out with this can't be real. It's got to be fake, because I've never done it. So when you astral project, of course, the mind leaves the physical body, or your actual energy leaves, and it's free to roam around the astral plane. We just mentioned that. So the astral plane is the world where spiritual communication happens on a very profound level. And profound meaning spiritual development comes far easier and faster than it does in a normal state of mind. Now, you can kind of almost say, when you're younger, you're open-minded, so you're more accepted to the paranormal. When you're older, we've explained how you shut that down. You don't think about it. You're not so open-minded about it. So you don't really, even though I always say that everybody's had a paranormal experience, you might just be closed-minded to it because you're not a child no more. You're not an open spirit, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And so in the collective thought of the realm of understanding, so then you go, you remember I mentioned the silver cord.
Yeah.
So the silver cord has been described as being a smooth, very bright, very long, like an elastic cable made of light. I don't know how somebody would know that, but obviously in astral form, they can see it. I've never seen nothing like that. But basically in astral travel, I mentioned you remain attached to your physical body. It's basically like an umbilical cord. And, in my research, I'm looking through my notes right now. It said that some travelers in this world are able to see the silver cord when astral projecting. If the cord is broken, basically they're saying that you are killed physically and astrally. So here again, when people are teaching somebody to astral project, are they telling them this? Like, if your cord gets broke, you're basically gone. I didn't, this is something that, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know about a cord because I've never seen my cord.
It's called it's the reference of it in most circles of information on this is called the etherical cord, the etherical silver lining cord. And it's nothing more than a hypothetical, in theory, a attachment line or cord that goes from your physical body to your etherical astral self. And
right.
If it ever gets ruptured, snaps, breaks, disconnected, the negative connotation to what multitudes of individuals have said is, for all intents and purposes, you are no longer inhabitable or have a connection to your physical body, and you are disassociated from it, which
Right. You can't, which means you won't be able to return.
right. That's supposedly what it means.
Right. So here I am going, well, when I astral project, I don't see it. What happened? I need to do further research to find out about the people that don't see it. What is that about? Because if you got people that do see it, then what about the people that don't see it? Is it there and we just ain't able to see it? Or is it like basically our mindset is a little bit not, I don't know if I want to say like higher. We just don't, or we just ain't paying attention to it.
From my understanding, it's this. In the physical world we live in right now, you have conscious thought. You will your body to do things. You will yourself to say things, to move, all these things. It's a thought first, it's energy, then it becomes an action. Now, people have asked me when I've had these conversations before, what is it like on the other side? The best way is imagine you're thinking to yourself, okay? You're not speaking, but you're just thinking to yourself out loud. Now, also imagine you're traveling places, okay? You're going here, you're going there. Those are the two aspects. The third aspect is this. You can't speak. You don't have the physical attributes to talk, but you have thought, you have projection, you have energy. Now, I want you to think, for everybody that's listening, think about a time in your life where you were super excited about something, happy, full of joy, or scared, or something happened to we felt crippling fear inside you. All of those emotions you feel on the other side. And that emotion is an expression of energy, which shows intent or thought or form of projection. And that's how things are expressed.
So we think. You don't really know. I mean, you have like two general natures of astral travel, which is the mystical model, and the mystical model, which includes a very large variety of belief systems and astral maps. See, now you're getting into astral maps. Like there's actual maps to the astral projection, and they're tied together by their core belief that astral travel, of course, takes place on the outside of the physical body. Then you have the phasing model, which was defined by Robert Monroe, I believe his name was.
Yeah, Robert Henry Monroe.
So the Monroe Institute, right? Is that the one you mentioned?
Yep, up in Virginia.
Okay, right. So he was investigating the human consciousness, holds the belief that it is possible to actually do physical astral projecting.
Yep.
Now, I'm going to give you something a little bit more religion because it kind of ties in. So ancient Egyptian teachings present the soul. They believe that you do have the capacity to hover outside your physical body. And then you had a bunch of scholars. Now, this is where it gets a little religious, but they have claimed that the Bible contains mentions of astral projection. Now, I've always said I've never read the Bible. And again, I'm not religious because do I believe in a higher power? Yes, but I'm not religious because of what I do. I don't see that I can do both. I haven't figured it out yet. But when you say to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, some say what? The Holy Spirit. You're talking about ghosts. So now you got scholars that have claimed that the Bible contains mentions of astral projection, and how they do that is the final chapter of the book of let's see it. It's written by Solomon anyway. I can't really say the name. And basically it was cited in this respect. This is the quote from the Bible, I guess. Before the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be shattered at the fountain, or the wheel be broken at the cistern. So basically, they mention the silver cord in the Bible. I never knew that.
Yep.
because I never read the Bible. But
Yep.
so it's kind of weird that I mean, I don't know if you want to say weird, but it's kind of unique that, you a bunch of religious folks, they always say, man, you're chasing demons, you're doing this, you're whatever. But yet when you read the context of the exact thing that they're reading, and you try to mention to them and you say, hey, it mentions everything that I'm telling you, it mentions this in your book. Why can't you? Did you just not get to that part? Or what? Or did you not understand what the silver cord was? You're just thinking it's something tied to God and Jesus, which I can dig that. But when you got scholars like diving in and then they say the silver cord, well, we just mentioned what the silver cord was. So it's there. But it can be achievable by yoga. I mean, there's many ways to relax yourself and your inner being and your mind to be able to astral project. You got individuals with special capabilities like shamans are said to travel to remote places and report things.
Yeah.
Which are unavailable to people with normal abilities.
Yep.
So that would be like they go and they astral project and come back, and I don't know, would you say that Nostradamus was an astral projector?
Nostradamus, yeah. I mean, I just think, well, I mean, collectively speaking, all the individuals in history that were able to garner information, or they would go in trances, or they would have dreams and have, angelic information passed to them and all this stuff. If you look at it logically based off of the foundation of what we just discussed on this episode of astral projecting or going someplace that you don't normally go, getting information, it's from a higher level, hence a higher consciousness. That very well may be the fact on some of those pivotal people within the timelines of history and of what's there.
What's your thought on Scientology? What's the meaning of Scientology?
I don't know much about Scientology. I just know there's a few movie stars and a few well-known people from TV that are into it, and I know it's a very closely guarded institution. And I think, like any organized theology or thought process, that everything has its merits based upon the foundation of what it stands for, but wholly and ultimately based upon the believers or followers that subscribe to that thought process. I think that's where it gets its strength. Right. I think that's where it gets its strength from ultimately.
Well, the reason I ask is because there's many 20th century publications on astral projection. Although only a few authors remain widely cited, one being your Robert Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
The other includes Oliver Fox. And then I'm going to probably butcher his name, but it's Sylvan Muldoon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Sylvan Muldoon, one of Sylvan's books, formed the basis of theories of the Church of Scientology founder Hubbard.
Mm-hmm.
So the founder was Hubbard of Scientology, right?
Yeah.
So one of Muldoon's books formed the basis for the theories of the Church of Scientology. That's why I asked you if you know anything about Scientology. Yeah, that's why I mentioned it to you, because this book, this publication on astral projection, is the basis for the Church of Scientology. I did not know that.
Now
imagine that.
Imagine that.
So
interesting.
It goes on and on. I mean, you can always get into, other artists, Swedish philosophers. I mean, this has been studied for quite a long time, and this is probably an episode where we need to do a part 2.
Oh yeah, there's just there's so much to the subject matter. It just goes on and on. But
it goes on and on. But it's so I just it kind of floors me with the research that I do on how this has been mentioned in the Bible and also the basis of Scientology was based off of astral projection in the spiritual realms. Maybe that's why a lot of people have a hard time agreeing to Scientology, because it deals with the astral planes and the different realms and stuff.
Well,
which
a lot of that is a subject matter that people don't talk about openly or understand. Normally it's reserved for people that are into metaphysical stuff or strictly part of that genre. You know, it's not open theology that is part of a morally widely accepted, you know, thought process. So
I don't know. Here's what I got to say. Tom Cruise, if you're listening, email us, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I want to know more. Now I want to know more about Scientology.
Right.
Before I didn't I didn't really care about Scientology. I knew Tom Cruise is in it and some other people are in it. And I'm a big fan of Cruise. And so I know a lot of people are. And now I want to do research on Scientology because it's based off of the theories and subscriptions written by a guy that wrote a book about astral projection. So now you got me intrigued about Scientology.
There you go. There you go. Well, as far as it goes with this episode of season 2, episode podcast number 8 on astral projection and out of body experiences, that is going to be all the time we have today for this episode. If you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, anything you want us to review, or just simply drop us an email to say hello, please feel free to email me and Dalton at info@theoryparanormal.com, and we will get back to you when we have a chance to. We definitely appreciate all of the feedback and the emails that we get from everybody around the world. It is always a pleasure to get something new, to check the inbox and see what's going on, and, you know, to say thank you. So, as far as it goes, as we say here at Theory Paranormal, don't be afraid to ask questions.